It's not the fight you knew you needed, but you need it nonetheless. We have Megatron, Phil Hawes, not Calvin Johnson, taking on the action man, Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis is finally in the UFC. Yes. And if you're an MMA fan from 2018, you're as excited as I am because, listen, if you watched a lot of Contender Series from the outset, Curtis was one of the highlight reel guys. And yeah, it's pretty well in his nickname, but it was one of the bigger disappointments in MMA when he wins his fight on Contender Series and then he doesn't get a contract and he retires. And it was just really, really disappointing. He was only retired for about 6 months. Then he beat Matt Dwyer, that was in the UFC at one point. He beats Andre Fiallo, who I like, with PFL. And then he goes on to lose to Magomed Karimov, Ray Cooper the third, Magomed Karimov. Anybody's going to lose them. They're going to lose to each other. That's how good they are. But they are some of the best welterweights in the world. Key there is welterweight. And so Chris Curtis, since then, 2020 and 2021, he's won 4 fights in a row. Listen, he's won 5 fights in a row. 4 of them are by finish. He's fought for ex-MMA, a big win over Kyle Stewart that was in the UFC. His last time out was a fight back on my birthday, July 30th. Send best wishes. Over Kenny Robertson at welterweight. He wins that fight. He was booked to take on Ty Freeman, but that fight fell out because ultimately, he ends up in the UFC. He's going to fight Phil Hawes. Now, why did that fight happen? Because Deron Winn. That's why that fight happened. Deron Winn was supposed to fight Phil Hawes a couple of different times. The fights fell out. Curtis was going to take the fight on the Friday of weigh-ins. And then I got the graphics ready, and then it didn't happen. So now we're here. Ultimately, Chris Curtis finally gets a call to take on Phil Hawes, who, I don't know, Rashad Evans was talking about like 10 years ago, and he had my ear. And then he lost to Julian Marquez. This is Phil Hawes here on Contender Series very early on, and I went, oh, okay, so the hype wasn't real. No, the hype's pretty real. And for Phil Hawes, in his last 5 fights, big wins over Yuri Fraga, over Kachimrat Bastayev, a guy who just won with Bellator, over Jacob Malkoun, yikes, over Nassourdine Imavov, and then his last time out over Kyle Dawkins. Matt, I like the fight, but they're 2 different weight classes. I mean, yeah, Chris Curtis is a big guy, but man, he's got a blood and guts style, and I don't know how it's going to translate to middleweight.
I was going to say, I like the opportunity. I'm not sure if I'm in love with the fight, because Chris Curtis is going to eat some shots. That's a guarantee in this matchup. He's going to eat shots. He was going to eat punches down at 170 pounds. Now he's fighting up a weight class that he doesn't really belong in against a huge middleweight. And that's the thing about Phil Hawes. He might only be, 2 inches taller than Chris Curtis? In my mind's eye, he probably weighs 20 pounds more by the night of the actual weigh-ins. Because Phil Hawes, he's built like a brick house, especially for this weight class. And he's shown the ability to, defend takedowns from big guys at this weight class. Shown the ability to land power shots. Really, the only thing I worry about with Hawes is his gas tank against, elite guys in this weight division. But when he's fighting guys making their UFC debut who just don't really belong in the weight class, it feels like Chris Curtis is almost starting this fight with a 2-point deduction, if anything. He's fighting out from a really, really big lead. So it's a good opportunity for Curtis. It's nice to see him in the UFC. He's a guy who's really been around the regional scene. And like you mentioned, he's retired multiple times. And the fact that he has now been able to get up to the UFC after facing so much adversity is very, very admirable. It's like we saw last week with Glover Teixeira, a 42-year-old who's lost fights.
Look at us.
Exactly. He's reinvented himself, and now he's come back. Same thing with Chris Curtis. Yesterday doesn't define your tomorrow. It's just a lot when you're coming in fighting Phil Hawes in a week's notice. We were talking before we started filming. When you beat Kyle Dawkins, you're probably ready for those, maybe not ranked fighters, but you get the idea. Those 15 to 25 guys. Then if you win one of those fights, then you're probably ready for a main card slot on a pay-per-view maybe. Just, a big opportunity against a good name. That's not what Phil Hawes is doing right now, so that's why it's just weird matchmaking.
Tuesday's gone with the wind, and when I really do look at this from another Leonard Skinner perspective, it's, ooh, that smell! When I was a kid, I thought, what? But the smell is defeat. The smell is defeat. When I look at this one, Matt, the odds, I wrote them down, minus 350 for Hawes at open, minus 334 now. For Chris Curtis, open plus 275, plus 255 on best fight odds. Tapology votes, I'm going to say over under 85% Hawes.
I would say over, yeah.
90% out of 1,004 total votes, 90% Hawes, 45% by decision, 46% by knockout. For the 10% that have Curtis, 59% by knockout. All right, boys, you talk a big game. You like Chris Curtis, but you didn't tell us how he's going to win if he is going to win. I'll tell you exactly how he's going to win. By setting a pace and fighting at his own pace. When you watch Chris Curtis at his best, and I've watched a lot of Chris Curtis lately on the regional scene, those ex-MMA shows, if you're not watching them, it's free fights.
It's decent level of competition.
It's
too.
good level of competition. A lot of old UFC guys. Andre Fiallo fought there. And the production quality is really good too. So I've enjoyed them, but I have been following Chris Curtis because, hey, I like Dana White's Contender Series, and I like watching Chris Curtis. When he fights at his best, stringing combinations together, but setting that pace on a fighter, and a guy like Carl Stewart, that's not easy to do, and Chris Curtis does it, and he picks his shots. He can rip the body. Once he backs you up to the cage, he can really pick you apart and then start chopping leg kicks in there. Switch stances a little bit. Give one to take one, and he does have a pretty good chin. I know, obviously, that's cost him in some fights, but that's what he's really good at, and I think at 170 it's going to be great. I just don't know how that translates. I see Phil Hawes going out there, and if he's got to put the wrestling shoes on, have a lot of success, and then win a fight. So for me, I like Phil Hawes. It's a little bit too much for Curtis, but man, if he blows the doors off of Phil Hawes, the sky's the limit. I would be impressed. Obviously, I'm going to be watching this fight either way, but I really like this one. But man, the deck is stacked against Chris Curtis. I have a hard time picking him.
It's just a really hard debut. How many times have we said this recently where it's like, this guy should be really good. It's just, this is an awful opportunity given to them by the UFC. Kind of like with Benoit Saint Denis last weekend. Like, hey, he could be a good fighter down at 155 pounds, so why are you giving him an absolute killer at 170? It's weird matchmaking. This reminds me a lot of that. I could see Curtis being a successful welterweight, but the fact that they're giving him such a dangerous middleweight is doing him no favors, and I like Phil Hawes quite a bit.
Hopefully Kiselev is not the referee in this fight, like Benoit Saint Denis, whose corner today said, you know what? No.
Yeah, we wouldn't have thrown in the towel no matter what.
Good to know, guy. Good to know. At least he knows his fighter. But Matt, in this fight, both of us going with Megatron, Phil Hawes to catch that touchdown pass from Matthew Stafford for like 90 yards. Throwing it back to you poor Lions fans. Yeah, both of us going Hawes in this one. Make sure you check out Question Mark Kicks 2 hours before the prelims. The QMK getting moving on Saturday. I love it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.